All right, good afternoon, everybody. Event Trader here with Blue Chip Trader. We're going to go through some of the earnings next week, but first, just wanted to take a quick glance at the macros so you're aware of what's coming out. Relatively quiet weekend. Don't forget it is a 3-day weekend. China's still going to be on their their Lunar New Year holiday, so it's going to be pretty quiet activity up through till Tuesday morning. Starting with Sunday, though, we do have some data out of Japan. They're going to be taking a look at their Q4 GDP numbers there. We'll also get a revised industrial production, nothing that's going to rattle the markets too much. Monday, overall, a pretty quiet day. There is a set of Eurogroup meetings, not expecting many headlines from there, but we're going to get the Eurozone industrial production and trade balance out earlier in the day. Again, the U.S. closed for President's Day. China will remain closed that day, too. Later on in the evening, we'll get the minutes from the Reserve Bank of Australia out at about 7:30, but overall pretty quiet in terms of what's expected on the economic calendar. Tuesday morning, things pick up a little bit more there. We're going to get the zoo surveys, the economic surveys from Europe, so some good sentiment data. We'll also get an early look at the Eurozone Q4 GDP and employment change numbers. These are all expected to be relatively weak given the run of data we've seen from there. And the European finance ministers will also be meeting. In the U.S., and this is going to be a popular theme next week, sentiment data coming from the Empire Manufacturing Index. We're going to have that out at 8:30. And then later on in the afternoon, net long-term tick flows. Not looking for anything too exciting there, but worthwhile keeping it on your radar. In the evening time on Tuesday, we're going to get Japan with their trade balance and core machinery orders. And that's relatively it for Tuesday. Again, China will be closed on Tuesday. Wednesday, we're going to be getting the CPI numbers out from the UK as well as their PPI and RPI figures. In Canada, we'll be getting some more inflation data. And then here in the US, PPI numbers are due out as well as retail sales. Later on that morning at 9:15 a.m., we'll get capacity utilization and industrial production, and then some more sentiment numbers with the NAHB housing market survey joined by business inventories. Later on, we're going to be getting at 2 p.m. the Fed minutes for a recap of Powell's January 28 meeting. We'll be keeping an eye out to see if they talk about the long end of the curve. I think that's probably the only news item that would be a headline grabber, but everything else should be generally in line with past conversations that we've heard from the Fed. We haven't really seen them move too far off from their message. And Wednesday night, we'll get some jobs numbers from Australia. China is back open for business on Thursday. And we'll also get the ECB policy minutes out that day. On Thursday morning, Lael Brainerd will be speaking, notable governor there who has been talked about as the replacement for Powell potentially when that comes up. I think it's 2022. So, you know, her comments will probably have a little bit more of an impact on the markets than usual. We'll also get some more sentiment survey data out with the Philly Fed. Starts and permits coming from the U.S. and claims. So pretty busy morning on the economic data front for the U.S. Then nat gas storage and crude inventories will also be out that day. Starting Thursday evening at a little bit early, but we'll be getting the flash manufacturing PMI numbers from Australia and Japan. We certainly want to keep an eye out on that data, as well as the Australian retail sales. Moving on to Friday, the 19th. The German PPI numbers, so some nice inflation numbers for us there. The UK retail sales data, and then we'll get the Eurozone manufacturing and service PMI preliminary numbers. So as you can see, a pretty strong week of sentiment data coming out. We'll also get the UK numbers at 4:30, and then the US at 9:45 a.m. Also in the US, we'll be getting the existing home sales. So that is what is on the calendar. So as you can see, some good home data coming out, and perhaps most importantly, we're going to be getting a look into a lot of different sentiment numbers and inflation data, and again housing. So some interesting figures that could impact trading next week, and particularly with those Fed minutes. So with that, we are going to move on to the earnings portion of this, and Scott's going to jump back in here with me. Scott, before we break into the earnings, I would note we did see Fubo test that 47 level. It is getting rejected a little bit off about 50 cents, so we'll continue to monitor that action as we discuss.
Yeah, it just got above yesterday's pullback high, right, which came in about 46.20 area. It's been consolidating above that here this afternoon. Looks still pretty good. Obviously, you make a new high, you got some profit takers ahead of a 3-day weekend, but still overall, the bounce off the 20-day moving average that we discussed a little earlier is looking pretty solid here for maybe even a potential swing. I am swing long this one. I know you're a little bit shorter term, but still has that potential momentum here as we have just over an hour left in the trading session.
All right, so let's break in. Again, we are closed on Monday, so we will be first day that we're looking at. Obviously, here is going to be Tuesday, with AAP being our first name of interest. Scott, certainly auto parts have been a pretty good performer here, but AAP, a little bit of a sideways trading direction going on. It did just recently test the 200-day moving average, which sits right around a psychological 150 level at the moment. But after it bounced off that, it failed to get back above the 50-day, which sits right above 159. So really consolidating pattern here that we could see a breakout for AAP in one direction or the other based around results. I would note that this was recently added to a JP Morgan analyst focus list. So there's a big house out there that's positive on it. You got any thoughts on AAP?
Pretty choppy action the last couple of months. I do like the fact that it did manage to hold and bounce back after the late January sell-off off the 200-day moving average, which also brought into play multi-month support around 145. So that's a pretty constructive sign there. That's going to be your line in the sand if you are interested in the name right here at 145. Upside, it's sloppy to the upside. There seems to be some selling pressure every time it gets back above 160. So you need some sort of sustainable bid above that level to really move to the upside.
All right. Next up, we've got CVS. And again, this is all going to be Tuesday morning before the market opens. CVS chart looks great here, Scott. There's been some positive analyst commentary around it. I believe Cleveland Research recently had a pretty strong channel check for them, seeing some RX tailwinds. They are part of the COVID-19 vaccine dissemination there, so some pickup in business one would expect from that. I get the feeling that people are just kind of hanging out in CVS and Walgreens hoping that they get the miracle call that there's a vaccine sitting around waiting for them. So maybe that's helping people buy some more goodies in the CVS. But great looking chart here as it's meandering its way higher. Ran into a little bit of resistance at 77. But recently bounced off its 50-day moving average ahead of these results.
Yeah, I agree, Gav. It looks pretty solid. They're rising above the 50-day moving average. Each pullback seems to have been bought up. It's not the sexiest stock in the world, but it does look pretty good. As always, if you're looking at one of these stocks, one of the close competitors is going to be Walgreens, WBA. I would also take a look at that one. It also has been showing some solid relative strength as well, getting back above the 200-day moving average this year, also rising above a 20-day moving average and 50-day moving average. So, yeah, good solid-looking group there that you basically, as from an investing standpoint, just kind of see how it responds to earnings, and maybe you could pick some up on the cheap side as long as those support levels are still maintained.
All right. Next up, the name that I'm involved with here, Ecolab, ECL. I got involved with this one. Obviously, a lot of focus is going to be on sanitization and on hygiene moving forward. Now, Ecolab, one of the problems is a lot of their services are for restaurants and movie theaters, things along those lines that obviously people aren't in, schools as well, but there will be a return to it. And when there is, there's going to be a big focus on keeping things clean, and Ecolab should be a real nice play. This is just kind of meandering in a sideways direction. We're in from around the 190 level here, Scott. So still a good trade, and 2021 will remain a bit of a transition year for them, but I think the next couple of years this is going to be a good place to have some money parked.
You've been talking about this one for a couple months now, Gav, and I think as a long-term investment, which you've basically laid out for us, I think it's definitely worthwhile a closer look. I do like the fact that it has dipped underneath the 200-day moving average a couple times over the last year and has been quickly snatched up, so that tells me there's some value down there at those levels because of the quick recovery effort. Recently, it did the same thing around the 200, 205 area. It's bouncing off that level again. Hopefully, it breaks out to new highs sometime soon, gets moving over 225, 230.
All right. Next up, we got EXPD expediters. The area that I follow, Scott, that was up the most today was the IYT,
Yep.
which is looking pretty solid here. Been banging the table on that despite some weakness. I know it hasn't been the sexiest area, but all you're hearing about is the backup at these ports, and there's a lot of pricing power going out there. Expeditors, I'm expecting them to reflect that. This is a stock that's edging up and trying to test around that 100 level. So you got any thoughts on Expeditors, EXPD?
It does look like one of the strongest trucking logistics, freight companies that's out there right now. It seems like it's doing better than JBHT and C.H. Robinson, Knight Swift Transportation. So I'm going to like it from that perspective. I do like the fact that I get busted out over 95 resistance here this week. That's also, bringing it into, I believe, let's check that out. Is that all-time highs for that one? If I go to a monthly time frame. It looks like all-time highs for EXPD. So, yeah, pretty good behavior there. If you keep $100, the century mark on the radar. If it falters a little bit, I'd say, it still looks pretty good above $90, the early February lows overall. Yeah, it's solid. And the other group too, Gavin, you mentioned this earlier, going into midday. Shippers are hot.
TK looks great.
Yeah, I mentioned a few of that. We talked about them, 2 days ago, was it, when you said that backing up in the ports and stuff? Or
yeah, we've been talking about them all week.
So Shippers was a hot mover today. TK, I know that was your pick, breaking out to fresh multi-month highs. NAT, Nordic American Tankers, was the one that I mentioned. It had a really good performance back in March and April when the global economic shutdown happened. All these shippers and freights out at sea had to sit there for storage purposes, so that one did really well. And then we just went through the whole list. DSX was another one. Diana Shipping having a great day there today, and there are a couple more that we mentioned. So the group is pretty. The group is pretty hot.
We'll be breaking into Scorpio Tankers. STNG is later on this week, so we're going to talk about that one here in a little.
Yeah.
So looks good. But next thing that we probably want to break into here, Scott, we both long it. We're just talking about it. Palantir, PLTR, is going to be reporting. We talked about that coming back down into that 30 level. Certainly it looks like some people are nervous about this going in ahead of earnings. So I'm just looking at this as a little bit of profit taking, given some unsurety there. You could also maybe say that the bounce off 32 a couple of weeks back was a little light in action, but I remain positive on Palantir. Could very well be a sell the news and coming back in at 26 in reaction to earnings, but I'd just be a buyer at that point if that's the case.
Yeah, it's a possibility that could happen. Anything goes when it comes to reacting to earning surprises and whatnot. I'm still swing low on this name from below $25 when it started. When we started the new year, took a bunch off the table on that strong breakout there. It's pulling back into a key support level, that $30 vicinity, which lines up with the November-December highs and the pivot breakout point from late January. It also has a newly calculated 50-day moving average, which is coming into play around 28s right now. So if I line that up with the pivot breakout point, that's $28, 30 psychological level. I like this name anywhere between $28 and $30 overall. Hopefully it doesn't break below that in response to earnings, but we'll see how that plays out.
All right, next up we got pet play here, Zotis ZTS. Pretty strong name. They recently, well, not recently, but back in December, they raised their Dividend by 25%. So that's always a good sign there. And certainly the pet names have been pretty strong as of late. Cleveland Research had some pretty positive channel checks going on around this one back about a week ago, and that's helping lead this one up towards that 170 area for a potential breakout.
I concur. It looks fantastic. A little bit of a consolidation going on here. I guess classic technical analysis might say that there might be a head and shoulders top in play here, but the key point of that head and shoulders pattern would be recognizing the neckline, which I would say comes in right around 155 area, along with the 200-day moving average, which is that green line. So as long as it stays above the 155 area, 200-day moving average, I think it's going to be pretty good for a continuation to the upside. Which, on a side note, if this is indeed what someone would define as a head and shoulders topping pattern, right? Here's your left shoulder over here, back from Q3 of last year. Your head was right here in November, and then your right shoulder developed over the last couple of weeks. Sometimes you like to have the right shoulder a little less than the left shoulder, but I'm not picky when it comes to these subjective patterns. So if price action does get above the right shoulder, usually, actually I should say most of the time, that's considered to be a failed pattern, and what you get is a breakout above the head of the pattern. So just be aware of that. And basically, if you can't see what I'm talking about, it would just basically be a downtrend break of the January highs around 170. That usually will lead to a new high test of the head, which comes into play around 176. Just be aware of that.
All right. Next up, we are moving into the after hours now on Tuesday. We got Avis Car Rental, or Avis Budget Group, ticker symbol CAR. Pretty strong name. I'd be a little nervous about the potential for these results, though, as it's popping up against some resistance around the mid 40s. But, a reopening trade that is unlikely to see great results. So really curious to see how people react to the name.
Yeah, it's surprising that it has been in such a steady uptrend over the last couple of months here. But yeah, $45. That looks like the line in the sand. On a longer term monthly chart, it does look like $50 is coming to play. So keep 45 in as the short-term resistance level, and then $50 is definitely looking like the ultimate inflection point for this stock. Here you can see that on the long-term yearly chart. So keep that in mind there. If it falters, let's go with 40 round psychological level as initial short-term support, but then 35 seems to be the next key level there. So some nice round numbers there, every 5 points.
All right, next up we got Exact Sciences, EXAS, cancer diagnostic company. This space has certainly been hot as of late. And we got EXAS breaking out near all-time highs here. So, again, one that I'm curious to see if it can hold its gains following a round of results, given a big run-up.
Yeah, really strong stock. I love my stocks trading at all-time highs. That means the path of least resistance is usually higher. All you have to do is worry about legitimate selling. So it's a pretty good structure going on here. As I said before, watch those 50-day moving averages and 20-day moving averages. How price responds to them is usually indicative of how many eyes are on the stock and how well it's behaving. EXAS, you can see over the last 3 or 4 months has pulled back to the 20-day moving average zone and rallied above it, pulled back to the 20 zone, rallied above it, pulled back to a 50, rallied, pulled back to a 50, rallied. So there's definitely some accumulation going on in this stock over the last couple of months. It's a matter of whether that can still be maintained in context of that rising uptrend. Look for a breakout over 155 level, which seems to have been a little bit of a struggle here. So as long as it stays above the 50-day moving average, I like it for potential further upside.
All right, we got RNG Ring Central breaking out following people going off the Avaya AVYA results as a read-through. Company does tend to guide conservatively, and I hate names that break out in front of earnings. So I'd be a little cautious of chasing this one, and it would not surprise me if we saw this kind of see a sell the news, especially since they are a habitual conservative guider, and pull back into that 400 level for a key test, Scott.
Yeah, it's also a low float gap too. It's got about
Yeah.
78 million shares on the float, so you're definitely going to get the extra added volatility that comes along with that. So, but beautiful looking chart. I wish there was. I don't trade this one that often. How much is the volume? Yeah, the volume's trades underneath a million shares on average daily volume time frame, so it's kind of off my radar. But what a great looking pattern and chart here. Got that clean breakout from that summer consolidation. Really took off to the upside in that early December breakout over the $300 resistance area, and ran up strongly into year end. Had a beautiful little January pullback to the 50-day moving average, and then just launched higher here in February. I concur with you. I don't like to chase stocks going into their earnings reports. This does look like it has some big expectations to fill, so hopefully they exceed those, to continue moving higher. If they're in line or they guide lower or anything upsets the apple cart there, you can probably expect price action to come back in a level. I use the 400 area as the first line in the sand, followed by the 50-day moving average at 380.
All right. Next up, we've got solar inverter play SEDG. Just taking a look at Enphase. Enphase, they saw a little sell the news reaction to their results, so I guess we keep that in mind. But these two remain in pretty good shape. SEDG just been riding its 50-day moving average here. Right now it's trading at about 329. 310 would be the key area. That's, again, where the 50 and 20 are converging right now if they're able to maintain these recent gains.
Yeah, a little sloppy action for solar stocks lately. They were phenomenal all throughout 2020. The TAN, just rocketing higher. TAN is the ETF, the solar ETF, and the group has been hot. And some of these names have just been fantastic trading vehicles for a lot of different people. And it's been looking pretty solid here. So it does look like the momentum is slowing down a little bit for the group here. So it's gotten a little choppy as of late, and it is what it is, man. I'm not really sure what to do with this stock here. It's getting just a little bit too sloppy at these higher prices, around the 50-day moving averages and whatnot. It still looks pretty good. Bigger picture uptrend is there. It's just kind of in the middle of the road there. It's a little bit too sloppy for me to kind of gauge anything on it.
All right. Next up, we are now moving into Wednesday, and we're going to be taking a look at Analog Devices, ADI. Pretty good looking chart here for ADI, pressing up against the 160 level at the moment. This is a 368 million float with about a 9% short interest, if you're curious. These guys do a lot of the manufacturing and testing for integrated circuits. We've talked a lot about the equipment players for some of these cell plays. This is more along the lines of telecommunications, of course, but pretty strong demand for the radio frequency and microwave ICs, and that is obviously being reflected in the ADI price action here as it tries to edge above 160.
Yeah, I mean, semiconductors are hot. We've talked about that for quite some time. This ADI is a beautiful breakout from October, above that 125 resistance that was in play for almost 2 years, and it's just been to the upside since then. So really strong momentum, strong sector, great looking stock here, just riding that 20-day moving average higher for the last few months. Pulled back to the 50, found support off that just a week ago, back near the highs. Buyers are in full control of this name, so hopefully our earnings confirm the strength behind that name as well.
Okay, then we're going to move in and take a peek at Hilton, HLT. Obviously, a lot of people are curious about how the hotels are doing with the reopening trade sitting around. So HLT, Scott, we got Marriott out later as well, so, and Hyatt as well, I believe. But these have been trading in sideways directions, holding on to the gains. People are just certainly hopeful of the reopening. What's your thoughts on HLT?
I think it looks great. A nice consolidation from that last earnings report in November. Broke out fresh 52-week highs, it looks like, or at least the 2020 highs, and just consolidating above the $100 level. So really nice move there. If this is a reopening play, you just gotta look for the momentum to continue with a breakout over $115. My only reservation about it is that it's not really my go-to trading vehicle stock. I don't know how much momentum might behind an be like behind an actual move. It seems like it tends to be very spotty and gappy and pulling back and trading in a range. So even if it does break out over 115, I would suspect that momentum slows down after a day or two. I wouldn't be sticking around too long on these names.
All right. Big winner for the for the COVID economy has been Shopify, SHOP. Man, I remember this thing at 300.
Yeah,
it's
a beast.
This looks like Chipotle. Like you just simply can't do anything but watch it go higher. I feel. Any thoughts on Shopify? You go to short it, Scott.
Hell no. Are you kidding? No way.
Yep.
I think I've tried trading it a couple times over the last year. There's been some pretty good setups, but it is one volatile stock to say the least. I mean, you really have to have a lot of patience and proper risk management to get involved with this name for sure. It can definitely move. I think look at the ATR on this thing. It's about $57 lately.
All for the upside.
Yeah.
There's no downticks in this thing. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. It's actually on our liquid momentum focus list leaders. It's been up there for a while, so clearly just running to the upside there. I missed out on the move there in early February. So what to say, Gav? All-time new highs. One of the strongest stocks in the market. Yeah. That's it. I would say keep watch on some of those peers. How about Wix? Let's see what Wix is doing.
Wix is going. Let's not give away the Apple card here. Wix is going to be out in a couple minutes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad.
We're keeping it in chronological order, so it'll be easy for people to listen to the retape. But Wix is going to be out tomorrow morning. Actually, Wix is out the same day. My bad. So we could talk about Wix and pop back to Wing. So what's your thoughts on Wix here?
It looks good.
Yeah.
It looks good. It should follow the footsteps of Shopify. Not only does this consolidation pattern that's been going on here for the last 6 months, it has a really solid neckline support at 240, which the 200-day moving average rose up to meet just recently in January, and then you saw prices lift off that area in early February to break that multi-month downtrend. But if I switch over to a weekly time frame, I mean, this is just take a step back from your computer and just look at this thing, and this is just absolutely beautiful of a strong run up from the early half of 2020 and consolidation for a few months and then moving back to the upside. So technically this should continue back up to new highs around 320 at least or higher. We'll see how earnings play out. As I've said before, earnings comes around 4 times a year. It is the one disrupting factor on chart that could really ruin a good technical pattern. But overall, I think Wix is looking pretty solid. Even on a monthly time frame, look at this thing. Monthly time frame, just really nice, beautiful breakout here from a 5 to 6 month pullback. Just looks beautiful.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, does your wife or kids ever walk in when you're doing your look from across the room at the chart?
No, they usually knock on the door first. But I did hear the dog yelp just a little while ago, and I'm wondering what one of my kids did to the dog since he just got neutered. He's a little sensitive. Yeah, he's a little sensitive, and I didn't like the way that yelp sounded. So
yeah, I probably just caught him wrong.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, no, they're yeah, that was kind of random, Gav. Did you hear that?
I just had this vision of you sitting there from across the room, like in an art gallery or something, and
did you
your wife walking in and
no,
just making
No,
fun of you.
do you remember that video that came out a few years ago where that guy was talking and it went viral, where he's talking and all of a sudden his kids come prancing in the room in the bumblebee outfit and the baby comes in with like the baby walker and then the wife comes running in like at full speed to like grab the kids and get him out while he's talking to like, do you remember that video? Oh, it's
I have
classic.
not seen that. I have
Oh my
not
gosh,
seen
it's
that.
hysterical. It's like a 30-second clip, and but that's like the whole work at home environment. It's like
Yeah,
the stuff that's going on. That's why we don't have cameras. First of all,
yeah,
I'm not really pleasant to look at, but second of all, there's probably stuff going on in the background that people
yeah.
don't need to see.
We, we'd be out of jobs if there was cameras.
Yeah, yeah. I have a
Um,
face for radio.
all right. So we are moving into Wednesday after hours now. That they were all before. Actually, no. Wingstop, Scott, real quick. Another good-looking name here. Big winner for COVID and Testing 170 breakout.
I've never been to one, but obviously other people have because this stock is just doing phenomenal.
Yeah.
WING. It looks like it's getting right back up to the highs there. Again, you're talking about a mid to small cap name that's basically running up ahead of earnings into all-time highs. I have my reservations about that sort of behavior. That's why we usually take the pre-earnings pop trade. You know, we talk about that a lot. Usually stocks within a week of reporting earnings, there's actually this drift higher, this subtle drift higher that happens in a couple names. Sometimes if you're on top of it, you can time it right, especially if the technicals are lined up properly. You get a nice little pullback to a certain moving averages and whatnot. I think even it's just an unexplained phenomenon, you know, that people just kind of anticipate ahead of earnings. This one clearly fits the bill there. So we'll see what happens to earnings, but overall it looks pretty solid.
Okay. Let's see. BIDU moving into the after hours on Wednesday. Arguably the strongest name out there on from the Chinese space. One name that I keep an eye out on here is everybody was kind of making fun of all the Reddit names in the run up, but I really thought BlackBerry had some viability here. They announced the deal with Baidu around EVs, so keep an eye out on BlackBerry just as maybe a secondary play here. But Baidu, Scott, I know you've been talking a lot about how strong it's looked. Any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, this stock basically defies all of what we're used to as technicians when it comes to evaluating price. Usually, it's referred to as a staircase higher and an elevator down. In that regard, usually what I mean is that basically prices climb for very slowly over a period of years, and then usually they collapse, and there's a panic selling corrective mode that happens. Baidu did the opposite over the last 3 years. It's been this slow, gradual, painful death off the 2018 highs, where it was trading over $250, and then it sank all the way down below $100, losing more than 50% of its value. And here it is. It's just like taking the rocket ship higher over the last 2 months, really just recouping all of the losses that it's had over the last 2 to 3 years in such a short time frame. It's very bizarre to see that. For Baidu, you know, it's above 300, so it's wild up here right now. I would just kind of, you know, I'm not participating in any of it. I would basically hope it comes back in, maybe to a rising 10 or 20-day moving average for an opportunity around 260, 280.
All right. Next up, another one of those names that just goes up and up and up. Boston Beer Company, ticker symbol SAM. Really bailed out by their Truly brand, which has been a huge driver for it. It's going to start getting up against some tougher comps for Truly. So I guess if you're looking for a reason why people might sell, you know, that big boost that they've got from that might start to wane a little bit. I'm not a fan of chasing Sam. Of course, I said that at 800. You know, but it is near all-time highs at 1150. You got any thoughts on this chart here, Scott?
Yeah, phenomenal. I mean, like you said, in addition, you know, it probably expanding into the Truly, what is that, hard salsa? Seltzer. Yeah, that's probably one of the smartest moves they ever made. I'm looking on the website right now. It looks like that was actually introduced back in 2016 So again, it probably took a little while for it to get full distribution and to catch on as a new drink because 2016 the stock was not looking so hot there. It was in a significant downtrend for a couple of years, but that has turned the corner here into 2018, and then it just basically has taken off as popularity. Took hold here the last couple of years. We all pretty much agree too that during the pandemic and lockdowns that alcohol sales have probably gone through the roof. So that's definitely been a big beneficiary. It's at all-time highs. I don't know what to say. I would just say I don't know. It's thinly traded too, Gav. Like, what's the float on this thing? I don't think it's all very high to begin with. I'd be surprised if it is. Yeah, it's 9 million
It
shares.
is 9 million. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that explains the rampant, acceleration to the upside.
Sure.
Just be careful with it. $1,000 looks like a first support if it comes back in, followed by 900. Yeah.
All right. Next up, looking at FSLY, FSLY. This one's been pulling in aggressively here, and the primary reason for that is the Biden administration's taking a close look at the Walmart Oracle bid in for TikTok. TikTok, of course, was FSLY's largest customer. That's why the stock got hit so hard back in late September when the Trump administration was looking to ban TikTok, if we recall. Now we're seeing some concerns around TikTok again, but it's coming into that 100 cycle and the 50-day moving average ahead of these reports. Of course, Cloudflare, ticker symbol NET and ET, had results that saw some sell of the news reaction, and that's considered a close competitor of FSLY. So they got a couple of things going against it, which is helping leading to this decline here into some key levels, but could open up a little bit of a buying opportunity if they're able to surprise to the upside.
Yeah. Keep this one on the radar. I mean, really great looking chart over this. I'm showing a 10-year monthly chart right now, so you can see it went through that long consolidation phase between 2012 to about 2019-18 area, and then it's been on a steady trend higher the last 2 years. So you got some momentum at your back. The chart on a daily time frame does look a little bit too sloppy for my taste. You had that false breakout that happened in January, back below the 50, 20-day moving averages, but you still have that 200-day moving average around 45, still, basically putting a bigger picture cycle to the upside there. So be a little cautious with this one right now. I would need to see it get back above the 50-day moving averages around 48 or 49 to get me interested in it. If it drops, you have that key support level right off the September-October lows around 43, 44.
All right. Let's see. Then we got SunPower. Obviously, solar names have been pretty strong. So we talked about SEDG earlier, and SunPower is going to be finding their way onto radars too. So SPWR recently dipped back to that 40 level there, but we have seen it march back to 50 now at this point. You got any thoughts on SunPower, Scott?
Solar, like I said earlier, it has gone almost parabolic like in January. It seems like it's going through some sort of dust settling period, very choppy, volatile activity. I hate to throw it into the same camp, as I did with SEDG, but it just seems very sloppy right now. Even Enphase, very sloppy up here at the highs. SunPower, obviously, really strong performance-wise, but these are just very sloppy looking charts right now. I'd like them to just kind of report their earnings. Don't do anything disruptive, in regards to gapping up and around, and just continue to chop around a little bit. Let the market, focus its attention elsewhere. And then while these things go through a few days or few weeks consolidation ranging, the moving averages will come up, meet price, and then they can set up for new trading opportunities. But right now, this seems really sloppy.
All right. Next up, one of my long-term holdings, Synopsys, SNPS. We're in from about the $100 level here, so obviously some nice returns. I was just kind of pounding the table back when I first got in that this is a top AI 5G play and been rewarded with it, as this has just been a steady climber, and really been a low management name for me because it hasn't done much besides go up
Yeah, where'd you get in on this one?
$100.
Thanks for telling me about that.
I've told everybody about
Yeah, I know. I think
it.
I know it's been phenomenal. Look at this chart. This is a monthly time frame. Um, it's yeah, I mean it's almost parabolic on a monthly time frame, but when you got the fundamentals behind it to back it up, does that really matter? This one just looks great, Gavin. If it comes back to the 50-day moving average, 257, 260 area, I would look for it to hold in there. Um, yeah, I'm not chasing up here at these levels. It definitely could easily clear 300, being at all-time highs. If on a positive report, you might see some selling, profit taking short term, given the fact that it's running up into the report. If it does clear 300, but it still continues to look fantastic. Really good looking chart synopsis, SNPS.
All right. Um, Next up and last one for Wednesday evening will be Twilio. This is one that I'm really kicking myself on as, we've talked a lot about this one and just rallies to 433 here. Beautiful looking name, really strong. Basically a platform as a service. We're seeing the improvements in Uber and Lyft, and, they basically run their services on Twilio. So great name. If you missed out on Twilio, a name you could keep an eye out on here. I gotta double back and check the profile, but Scott, if you want to talk about Twilio, I'm going to be back on it in a second here.
Yeah, I would just say this as a side note. Anybody that is a disciplined listener to Trader Audio, anytime you hear Gavin and I say, oh, I wish I bought this stock. I wish I should get involved. Next time this thing pulls back, you get involved. There's only like 4 or 5 of them that keep coming up that we keep kicking ourselves for never getting involved with. Twilio's obviously been one of them. The other one has been MongoDB, MDB. We've talked about this one pretty much since it IPO'd 3 years ago, saying how we were each going to get involved with it. And every time we look at it and bring it up, we always see it's breaking out to new highs and just keep moving higher there. And so Twilio, MongoDB, just take note. Sometimes you got to read between the lines when Gavin and I talk about this stuff, especially when we're always sitting there saying, I wish I was long this one. I want to buy this one. I want to buy this one on the next pullback. Keep those on your radar as longer term plays.
Yeah, and the name that I was thinking of, Scott, that I was going to mention here, that was API Agora, which was the Chinese name. We were involved in this back at 43 and should have stayed involved with it, obviously. So
this one's been
add API to the list of names that I'm kicking myself for, Scott.
Yeah, this one just recently started showing up on the TA page scans.
Yeah,
it actually it's in there at the first one, believe it or not. It was a pullback long candidate for today, believe it or not. API, let's take a look at that real quick.
Yeah, it's basically the Chinese Twilio.
It's the Chinese Twilio, okay. So what, it made its debut last summer?
Correct.
Okay, so this is a really good point again. It IPO'd after 6 months. It basically went sideways and then re-emerged back above the IPO price, which came in around 45 recently, and then it's taken off to new highs. Strong momentum. Just recently, the last 2 to 3 days, it pulled back. So you have this beautiful looking, bull flag developing on a chart there, which is why it showed up on the pullback long candidates from the TA page scans. First one right there, API. It's also on the bang for your buck scans lately. That's where I've seen it. So it's a volatile name with a lot of momentum behind it. A lot of good trading opportunities here for anybody that's looking for day trading or swing trading opportunities is API. And I might have joined, let me check the liquid momentum focus list, because it seems like liquidity might be there. Let me take a quick look there, Gav. Did it join last week's list? It did not, but I wouldn't be surprised if it starts to pop on another week or so if this momentum is continued.
All right. Okay, so keeping an eye on things here. Next up, we are on to Thursday morning now, and five FVRR gig economy play here, and it is breaking out as well up to that 322 level. Good looking chart here, Scott.
Yeah, this one's been amazing. I mean, COVID basically just accelerated the stock to the upside. I mean,
Yeah.
there's been a few stocks that have been very strong beneficiaries of the pandemic, mostly technology related, obviously. But I would say like Zoom was probably the first beneficiary of it. And then after the unemployment rate went higher and everyone had to go find sources of employment, either you were creating your own business through Shopify or you were just kind of renting out your businesses as a freelancer through Fiverr, and this thing has just been rocketing to the upside.
All right. Next up, we got Hormel, HRL. Not the most exciting play here, more of a staple. They got a dividend yield of 2.03%. If you're curious, they recently bought planters from Kraft Heinz for about $3 billion and testing its 200-day moving average. So, for those looking to take a little bit of a break and a step back and from some of the crazier names that we've seen trading, HRL could provide a little bit of safe haven with some dividend yield here.
Yeah, I mean, this is an investing play. It's not really a
Yeah.
trading vehicle for us. I would just, if you have an income portfolio, Hormel is always a good one to buy on the dips. I say all the time, if you look at I'm not sure if this is a dividend aristocrat or a champion stock that's been raising its dividend over the years, but it is part of those typical
Now with the
safety.
dividend yield at 2.03%, I wouldn't think it is, but
I wouldn't think so, but yeah, it probably isn't. But anyway, it's definitely a slower moving stock, and most people pick it up on weakness as a value play, and that as a dividend sort of play. So, if that's what you're looking for, that should fit the bill. Yeah, that's it. I don't really have too much to say about it.
all right. Next up, we got Marriott, MAR. Very similar chart. No surprise, Scott, to HLT.
Yeah, not bad. Still struggling below the 2020 highs. You do have that gap from February that most stocks in the market have already recouped and recovered a couple months ago, but not the hotel, not Marriott hotels. So a little bit of a struggle there with that February 2020 gap, which comes into play right around $137. So that's going to be your line in the sand. Also lines up at the December high. So you need to get above $137 to get moving to the upside. To the downside, you do have the gap from November earnings in play, also along the January lows, which come around the 115 to 112 area. So that would be the range: 112 to 115 to the downside, 137 to the upside.
All right. And then we are back to the shippers here with Scorpio, Scott. STNG, we were just discussing those charts a second ago, and STNG looks just like TK. These names look great, so hopefully some people were able to pull the trigger on our mentions earlier.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this for over a week now, I think, and I highlighted a whole bunch of them this morning, showing how they're strong they were and they gathering their momentum. And yeah, Scorpio is definitely, I think we mentioned it 2 or 3 days ago, that breaking out over $15. So good action.
All right, and then Thursday morning, probably the biggest name of the morning is going to be Walmart. WMT, certainly get a feel of how the consumers was doing around the holidays. They got a lot of things to talk about with streaming services, their international sales. So it's going to be one of the more interesting names and obviously a big component of a lot of indexes, and curious to see as well how their digital growth has been performing as they try to keep pace with Amazon. But nice little sideways trading action, but it has been getting rejected at the 50-day moving average, Scott, which runs right around that 146 level. What's your thoughts on Walmart?
Yeah, that 50-day moving average lines up with the 2-month downtrend line as well off the peak there from early December. So that's going to be your line in the sand that it has to get back above. You want to see it trading back above 140, let's go 146 area, just to even, break out of this this 2-month channel that it's got going on here. It has found recent support just underneath 140, which comes into play around this congestion area from Q4 of last year. So a little bit, if it does falter and it does break down, say about 5%, that'll bring the 200-day moving average into play around 136. That would be the final line in the sand that I would have for that one, 135, 136 area for Walmart. So.
All right, moving on to Thursday afternoon. Applied Materials, AMAT. Talked about this name. This is one of the key areas that I was talking about in the trader strategy meeting, and you're really starting to see some of these semiconductors peaking up. But Applied Materials is another one of those equipment providers for the semis that's going to just continue to see strong demand for the upcoming quarters. Our AMKR looks beautiful here, Scott. It's ripped from 19 to 20, it got up to 25.80 today. It's pulled back a little bit since then, but these guys are going to see a lot of demand over the next couple of quarters. So if you're looking for a strong fundamental story, this is the area, and AMAT breaking out like the rest of those names.
Yeah, I wouldn't be chasing it here up at this level. I mean, pretty strong 2-day move. Definitely getting that pre-earnings run-up a week ahead of time. So, but you can't complain about the performance, the technicals, the pullbacks to the 20-day moving average, strong trending activity going on here. It might falter after earnings a little bit, maybe develop into a range. It looks like it's overdue for one. You take a look at the long-term monthly chart. It almost has gone, well, let's say it has gone parabolic because it was trading at $60 just about 4 months ago, and now it's pretty much doubled in price. So, yeah, really strong price action. I'd love to see it kind of go sideways, reset itself, have some of these short-term moving averages, rise up to meet price for better trading opportunities.
All right, and then we got a telecom equipment play, ANET, Arista Networks. Near all-time highs, 5G cycle getting underway, so high expectations for these results. I'd expect the company to provide a pretty good quarter and an upbeat outlook. They tend not to be huge beaters, so we'll see what happens. I got that CMBM in this space, and of course I've been hammering the table on Broadcom, AVGO. Scott, I know you've been a fan of that. That's another beautiful looking chart. But ANET giving us a look into the 5G build out.
Yeah, you look over the last quarter since November breakout, where it basically got out of that chop fest that it was in for a couple months there. It's been nothing but a 45-degree angle to the upside, rising above the 20-day moving average, 50-day moving average. Good activity so far. It is getting back up to the 2019 highs, so you're looking at 2-year highs coming into play, right around $330, give or take. So that would be your upside target. If it does have a good report, it would probably jump up to that level. To the downside, you definitely want to make sure that 50-day moving average and the recent pullback low in January holds right along that 300 psych level. If it falters underneath there, you might see some selling pressures kick, especially if it starts to fall more than 10%. It might bring price action down closer to, like, say, 270, back to the November, December activity there. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to see how it responds to earnings. But overall, really strong stock. It actually looks great on a long-term monthly time frame as well. I mean, I know this looks sloppy, but this is a good thing. When you get a stock that made a really, really strong run-up and then spends about 2 years just in a complete chop fest, but then breaks out into trending mode, I mean, this technically could be what happened in 2017. We have 4 months of a strong trending action here, exactly what happened in the start of 2017. All you need is a little bit of chop, 1 or 2 months of sideways range, and then things can get moving to the upside again. So that's what I would suspect happens, because it is pretty close to these highs here, that I would pretty much welcome a 1 or 2 month chop around this area and then set it up for another leg higher.
All right. Next up, talk about taking a look at something that's interesting on a longer term chart. Dropbox got DBX. Look at that on the weekly. This is a name that I'm surprised hasn't done better than it has. I don't know the business well enough to really give a good fundamental reason on that. It just seems like this should be higher given some of the other plays in this space that we've seen rally. So DBX, it does look good on a weekly though.
Yeah, I'll show my ignorance on this one. I used it one time to, send a file somewhere or receive a file from somewhere, and I've never used it again. I found it very difficult. I don't know why I didn't get it in a PDF format or something much simpler that was already existing for me to open up a whole entire new account and then get another new password and everything else. It just seemed like an annoyance to me. And it was all pretty much doing the same thing. I guess the difference is that this is like in the cloud, I guess, as opposed to a PDF or something like that. Again, a little ignorance on probably what's really happening there. But if I feel that way, and I'm not sure why this, if there's easier ways out there to do something, that pretty much explains to me why the stock has been, not really keeping up with the rest of the market. However, perhaps things are turning here. Maybe it's becoming more popular or whatever, and they're finding a better use for it because it is showing some improvement on the right side of the chart, back above all the key moving averages. $25 does look like the line in the sand for this as of late, but if you even go back, like you said, Gavin, on a weekly time frame, that $25 area definitely is looking. I would even go up to 26, which looks like the resistance levels from early 2019. So you start clearing 26, you might have a whole new uptrend forming in this name. So keep Dropbox on the radar.
All right. Next up, Planet Fitness PLNT. Another reopening trade. This one had a nice rally back to 82. Since then, it's been kind of chopping around, sitting on its 50-day moving average. 75 million float, 8% short interest if you're curious. Pretty expensive at 50 times forward PE and 13 times sales, given concerns around the overall workout environment. You got any thoughts on PLNT here, Scott?
Yeah, pretty solid move, for a recovery play. Um, It looks good. I mean, what do you look at it's back up near all-time highs, which is basically 2-year highs in this $80 area. So I'll give it the benefit of the doubt that it will continue to push higher here. I'm curious to know what the short interest is on a name like this.
8%.
8%, okay.
8%.
All right, so nothing crazy, but a 75 million share float. It looks good. If it falters, you got support around 70, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does make a move towards 85 and back towards those highs recently.
All right, keeping an eye out here. We got Roku, the streaming service. Speaking of streaming, just watching our Fubo here. So that's up to 46.36. The more I see the Fubo price action, more I'm inclined to carry it over the weekend, Scott. Roku, a lot of high expectations. Obviously, Netflix streaming was huge. Disney streaming, big numbers. So a lot of expectations around Roku to live up to. Taking a quick look at the Roku chart. We've got it here edging up near all-time highs around 460, looking for a break up above that 480 level on some positive results. If we see sell the news, I think you got to have that 20-day moving average around the 430 level on your radar.
I'm sorry, Gav, what was the ticker again? I had other things going on.
Roku, ROKU.
Yeah, I think this was another one that throw in with that Twilio and MongoDB. The only person I know that's really, I think, still holding it is Damon, Scalp Trader. He's liked it since the 40 and 50 area years ago. I can't argue. It's one of the strongest stocks out there this year. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a leader on the focus list. Shows up on the TA page scans constantly. I don't trade it enough. I probably should be. It's just got a beautiful patterns, beautiful trends, everything.
Yeah, speaking of that, last up for Thursday, we have one of Trend Tracker's favorites. He got into this one at the 30 and 40 level, and it's now up at $860. The Trade Desk, TTD, programmatic advertisers. So with streaming doing well, advertising is flying, and TTD falls right in that space. And obviously a second play on that would be MGNI here.
Yeah, he's nailed this one for the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, one of the first persons I know talking about it. He explained it multiple times to us in our strategy meetings each month, and he's absolutely killed it to the upside here. And knows a couple subscribers that have held on to it over the last couple of years, did really well in it. So. Um, it looks pretty good here. I wouldn't even take my own. Don't even take my advice from it. Stick to trend trackers. He's the one that he'll probably be buying it on dips. So if it comes back down anywhere around those gap support levels or the January lows around 750, 750, take a closer look at it.
And then finally, Friday morning, another one of my longs, Magna International. This is edging up towards all-time highs. I just love this as a play on the EV space. Everyone's running after the hottest thing without any sales, like a Highland or whatever it might be. And there's definitely a lot of puff around that area with people chasing it, money to be made on the trading. But if you're looking for a name with actual some viability, then Magna, I think, is the name that you got to be in. And so far, it's been just trading in a sideways direction for us. It hasn't been a crazy winner like some of the others, but I just think people are missing the story. And because it's an actual company, perhaps people just simply aren't, they don't care about it. They actually have 31 billion in sales, and maybe that's a turnoff for people. As opposed to QuantumScape, that'll run 500% without any sales to 2025. 31 billion in sales is the albatross around your neck, I suppose, for this market. But I love this play. There's Sapphire. Business unit. They make the chassis for a lot of these cars. They've been working with BMW for 20 years. So for me, if you want an actual legitimate play in the EV space, I'd be looking at Magna and GA.
And are those accounting ratios proper? I mean, price to sales is 0.73.
Yeah, I mean
that's cheap. It's not this strong.
It's primarily an auto supplier, and but even them, they're acted well too, and there's strong demand there. I just think that this is one of the most underappreciated stories out there, given their involvement in the space and their potential ability. They're probably, it's a 23 billion market cap. They're probably going to get bought out by some company that doesn't even have sales.
Yeah,
Quantum Scape here is a $9 billion company. They don't have any sales. Yeah. So it's amazing. It's the market that we're in, though, right?
Yeah, that happens. And I know we get feedback sometimes. Everyone's like, this market makes no sense. It's ridiculous. Yeah, who cares? That happens. This is called, the market goes through euphoric phases. It goes through fearful phases. It goes through greed phases. We've seen it over and over and over again. That's why it's an auction. If you try to apply logic to an auction, it's not going to make any sense. It's all about perceived value and looking down the road into the future, discounted value. And by looking at hardcore facts, you're not really going to understand the market per se. There are going to be times where you're going to diverge from that, and that divergence can last a cycle, which can be months or maybe even years at a time. And you kind of have to separate sometimes that activity and just kind of focus on price, which is why I love technical analysis so much, because I understood that divergence a long time ago, and I was just way more interested in making money. So I've really just prefer to lean more towards that mentality. But Magna, Gav, geez, I mean, the stock looks great, all-time new highs. I don't own this one, but every now and then you come up with these names that you're like, I got to put this in my long-term holding. I'm going to start monitoring this one a little bit better. Hopefully no problem to you. I hope it comes back down a little bit to a support level that I can pick some up on weakness. But the strong sector, cards,
you
autos,
with MongoDB there.
Yeah, exactly, right. And TWLO. Yeah.
And TWLO, yeah, exactly.
Just keep throwing them out there, right?
Two other things of interest out next week too that I'll just add on is 13F Scott. We'll take a look at some of those next week. And the other thing that I wanted to add is Thursday at noon is going to be the GameStop hearing. and just seeing some of the witnesses that are supposed to be there. Now, I don't know if they're confirmed, but this is from a Gasparino tweet. Gabe Plotkin, the Melvin Capital manager, Steve Huffman from Reddit, Ken Griffin from Citadel. That'll be interesting there. And then the Robinhood CEO, Vlad, I forget his last Tenov, I think is his last name. But so that's obviously going to garner a lot of attention. It should be one of the more interesting things. But I think that does it for our earnings then, Scott. We only got about 7 minutes left, so I think that's going to do it for me here. We did record these, and we're going to post that to the site for people too.
Yeah, sounds good, Gav.
All right. Well, some quick house cleaning.
Yeah, I'm going to hang on here, Gav. Let me just end the recording, and then we can go into house cleaning. All right.
Here.
So just give me 1 second. I'll tell you when.